And welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Happy Friday. It's pretty hard to argue with people who are passive-aggressive. You may have tried it before. Why are you so angry? They scream. Stop being violent, they snarl as they punch you in the face. Passive-aggressive people are intent on dominating you, but they're too dishonest to admit it. Now, it's not an honorable style of attack, but it's very effective, mostly because it's so bewildering. The Democratic Party practices this. Democrats will never meet you on an open field of battle. Instead, they will sneak up behind you and knock you unconscious with a bag of sanctimony. This is the party of weak men and angry women, so passive aggression is their only mode of communication. If you've ever seen one of Jen Psaki's press conferences, you know exactly what we're talking about. We watched one of them yesterday, in fact. It was her last. Peter Doocy asked Psaki what the administration thinks of the fact that liberal groups have posted the home addresses of conservative Supreme Court justices on the internet. Now, why are they doing this? Well, it's obvious why they're doing it, and no one denies why they're doing it. They're doing it in order to frighten those justices into changing their votes on Roe v. Wade. Now, that's illegal. It's very clearly a federal crime. It's also, by the way, the road to chaos and collapse. You can't allow angry mobs to make your country's laws. That's why we banned lynching. But Jen Psaki did not have a problem with this. People are understandably upset with Sam Alito's views, she said, so you shouldn't be surprised they want to express that concern in person by screaming at Sam Alito and his family. Quote, I don't have an official U.S. government position on where people should protest. Really, Jen Psaki? Are those the rules now? How would you feel if angry protesters showed up outside, say, Michelle Obama's house? Of course, they'd be thrown into thumbscrews within minutes and charged with racism, and you would applaud as they languished in jail. But conservative Supreme Court justices, no, that's a different story because conservative Supreme Court justices deserve it. That's Jen Psaki's position. But it is not, in fact, since we're speaking of this topic, the official position of the U.S. government. No. According to 18 U.S. Code 1507, the official position of the U.S. government is you're not allowed to intimidate judges. Period. Quote, whoever with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice or with the intent of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer in the discharge of his duty pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States or in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, juror, witness, or court officer, or with such intent uses any sound truck or similar device or resorts to any other demonstration in or near any such building or residence shall be fined or imprisoned. So it's very clearly a crime. Jen Psaki either didn't know this or far more likely didn't care, because as far as the Biden administration is concerned, Justice Alito is responsible for the threats against his family. If you don't want to be targeted by a mob, then don't write opinions the mob doesn't like, Dumbo. You did this to yourself. It's your fault we're hurting you. That's always the position of passive-aggressive people, and it's the position of the passive-aggressive party. So we recognized it immediately because we watch this stuff for a living. And then we saw this, and it made us think. This ran on CNN this morning. Now, for days, we have assumed, based on quite a bit of evidence, that the main threat to Supreme Court justices right now, and to our justice system itself, comes from groups of activist liberals who are enraged by the idea that Roe v. Wade might be repealed. These are the people who are spray painting churches and putting Sam Alito's home address on the internet. They're the mob, and they're angry, and we know why they're angry, so the whole thing made sense to us. But according to CNN, that's not what's happening. In fact, it's the opposite of what's happening. The real threat, CNN informed us this morning, comes not from people who are angry about Sam Alito's opinion, but from people who are happy about it. So the ones who are celebrating what Sam Alito wrote are the ones who are the real danger to the Supreme Court. Watch.
This morning, law enforcement officials are preparing for potential violence in the Capitol and nationwide after the leak of that Supreme Court draft opinion that would strike down Roe v. Wade after 50 years. Capitol Police are warning the far right is calling for violence against a religious group planning to rally for abortion rights. Whitney Wild is live outside the Supreme Court. Listen, seeing fences go up there, it's sort of like post-January 6th. What are you seeing, and what specific intelligence is warning police officials?
Well, at this point, law enforcement sources, several of them tell us that they are closely monitoring social media chatter that suggests that there's a potential for violence against abortion clinic providers, abortion clinic staff, members of the judiciary. That would include the justices here, as well as members of the federal government. And what we know after January 6th and what law enforcement knows across the country is that social media chatter can manifest into actual violence. Sometimes people really do say what they're going to do.
You got that? Law enforcement sources tell CNN the real threat here is the far right. The far right. Fences are going up outside the Supreme Court because the far right poses a threat. The far right is the one you have to watch out for. They're the ones whose electronic communications you've got to, quote, monitor closely. And that makes sense. Now that Roe v. Wade may be going away, these people are going to want to bomb as many abortion clinics as they can and hurt as many Supreme Court justices as possible. After all, the Supreme Court may get rid of a law that they have hated for 50 years. So you can see why they'd be moved to violence against the Supreme Court. Now, our first response to this was to laugh. It seemed too absurd to be real. How dumb do they think we are? And then we remembered what the President of the United States and his Attorney General have been telling us for more than a year. They've been telling us that no matter what happens, no matter what it may look like, the people who did it didn't vote for us. Yeah, the people who didn't vote for us are the dangerous ones. It's always their fault. Watch.
I have not seen a more dangerous threat to democracy than the invasion of the Capitol.
The greatest terrorism-related threat that we face in the homeland is the threat of domestic violent extremism.
According to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists.
Not Al-Qaeda, white supremacy. So when we reviewed those tapes, it started to make sense. Like the Mongols and the Visigoths before them, these dreaded white supremacists have declared war on civilization, these Trump voters, and the evidence for that is all around us. We've just ignored it because on some level we don't want to know. But in retrospect, it was always right in front of us. You recall when Trump voters looted that Macy's in New York City. They couldn't help themselves. That's who they are. Then they torched a police precinct in Minneapolis. The very symbol of the law, they set it on fire. And then they burned a federal building in Portland, Oregon. In case you've forgotten what all of these right-wing attacks looked like from white supremacists, here's what they did. So you can see why they're putting up barriers in front of the Supreme Court. Those people are so happy with Sam Alito's opinion, they might start burning and looting again. And of course, that would be consistent with the years-long reign of right-wing terror we've been living through. Because their thirst for anarchy and chaos is never sated, at one point, these Trump voters seceded from the United States. They set up their own nation of lawlessness, drugs, and squalor, and violence within the very city limits of Seattle. Just like the Confederates of 1861, but with more weed and spray paint. Right in the middle of Seattle. Talk about brazen, but that's who they are. That could happen in your town. No wonder America's abortionist community is cowering in fear tonight. And it gets worse. These MAGA people have so little respect for law and order, they think nothing of rushing into buildings, department stores, Walgreens, liquor stores, Foot Locker, and just taking what they want. They steal armfuls of merchandise off the shelves and walk out the door like it's theirs. And then, purely to amuse themselves, they push strangers in front of trains and open fire on subway cars. They drive trucks through Christmas parades and beat elderly Asian women on the street. Now, you can't control these people because they're beyond the reach of logic. They are so primitive and superstitious, they have come to believe they can defeat nature itself with magic amulets, like cosmetics and women's clothing. They think they're shapeshifters who can change their physical form at will. Just become something different. You're seeing one on your screen right now. People like this don't believe in history or science. They're barely literate. So they communicate instead in grunts and unintelligible sounds. Here's the leader, the chief of their tribe, speaking in a language only they can understand.
So the best way to get something done, if you hold near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
What did he just say? We don't know. You'd have to be a white supremacist MAGA person to understand. It's an esoteric language. These primitives adorn their bodies with fantastic decorations. They dress in costume. Some even push pieces of metal through their faces in order to look fierce. Look at them in their war paint.
Hi, my name's Az and I'm a preschool teacher. Recently we started wearing pronoun pins and the kids get to pick a new pronoun pin every day. We have some that pick like she, her every single day, and we have some that change it up.
So I'm a non-binary preschool teacher, and my kids know I'm non-binary. They know I'm not a girl or a boy. I use they, them pronouns in the classroom. We work on it. Not all the kids get it. That's okay. And I go by Mix Gray in the classroom, not Miss or Mr.
Man, y'all thought me teaching the children about me being poly was crazy. But not only that, but they also know that I'm gender fluid.
I'm going to give you my explanation about what it means to be transgender as well. So when babies are born, the doctor looks at them and they make a guess about whether the baby is a boy or a girl.
Kids as young as 3 and 4 are actually aware of their gender identity, even if they don't have the language for it. To say that pre-K through 3rd grade are not ready for such topics is actually internalized homophobia and transphobia.
Margaret Mead wrote about people like this. Antisocial elements that are a feature of any society. But in our case, the MAGA people number in the millions. You saw just a few on your screen. And because there are so many, they threaten the very foundations of our civil society, just like Alejandro Mayorkas and the Attorney General have warned us. They are so powerful that courts and legislators bow before their rage. Prosecutors can't even restrain them, but instead do their bidding. Why? Because they're afraid not to. Do you remember what the MAGA people did to Minneapolis when a jury dared to convict their spiritual leader, Derek Chauvin? The MAGA people stormed the jail, freed Chauvin, then carried him on their shoulders back to their guerrilla camps in the mountains, where they danced triumphantly before bonfires made of back issues of the Atlantic magazine, howling into the night sky. And then, as an indelible lesson to the rest of us, they returned to the city of Minneapolis and sacked it. Because that's what they do when they don't agree with the jury decision. They riot. That's what the MAGA people are like, and that's where they're the greatest threat we face. Do you remember that moment? We saved the tape. Ladies and gentlemen, here are the MAGA people.
Everybody out here enjoying themselves. We love being together as a family.
We'd play more, but it's stomach turning. Ask Jen Psaki what it looked like. She's never recovered from it.